traveling. Wonderful. Enjoy I'm really loud. A road trip. Kind of even a road trip to nowhere. Especially nowadays with the current fuel prices and diesel prices. It's cheaper to travel, actually just watching YouTube and watching other people travel. You just kind of travel with them. I'll tell you a story about that in a moment. But we like to do kind of road trips to nowhere, just into the mountain, Oakville area, whatever, and so on. And once came across some tourists, and they sat with a map, and they asked me, "Is this the right road?" And I said, "Well, it obviously depends. Where do you want to go?" And they said, "Well, we don't really mind." I said, "This is the perfect road." And I drove off. If you don't mind where you're going, choose any road. If you're not really concerned about the destiny, pick anyone. Anyway, that was just me being me. And then last night, this is just, it's going to possibly become relevant in a moment, but we were watching Jamie Oliver on YouTube. Jamie does Italy. Jamie cooks Italy. Jamie travels Italy. Really enjoyable. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to travel. It's a cheap way of travel. and you can pause and go to the bathroom if you have to. In any event, we absolutely love it because it really, Tanya, we both enjoy the scenery and all these magnificent places. And Tanya loves cooking, and I love eating. So it really works so well for us. And it's so weird, sometimes I get moved by weird things sometimes. Last night it was Jamie cooking with all these nonnas, all these old ladies, and they're showing him some of their recipes and so on. And the one lady was 92, and she was cooking, and now there's obviously it's Jamie and kind of an interpreter. There's just the two of them, and you start imagining that it's them, it's the two of them and whoever else. But you forget that there's a film crew, obviously. And now it's the three of them sitting and they're eating and so on. And just as she's dished, this 92-year-old Donna says, you. She's obviously talking to the crew. She says, "You must eat. You must come and eat." It's far too much for just the two or three of us. Any event, that was just a very moving moment. So it's just journeys of discovery. I think that's the wonderful thing about journeys. It's discovering beautiful places, good food, whatever, and often discovering something about yourself. So at the moment, we're doing a series called Arise, and for the folks that are here for the first time this morning, that's what we're dealing with, where we're heading. And so I'm going to be talking about this morning, Arise, men and women of dreams. Arise, men and women of dreams. And maybe you think, oh, well, that's not quite me. At the moment, with the way things are, financially, this, that, the other, and this war, and whatever, there's not too much to dream about. But I believe that life is a journey. Life is a journey, and it's an adventure. And if we let it, then it's a call to surrender, to exchange this narrow pathway into the mundane, into the same old, for vast open spaces that are there to be discovered. Pages and chapters of your life waiting, longing to be written. Dreams to be pondered. Futures to be explored. Like a mystical cave of wonders. Sounds all Aladdin-y. A mystical cave of wonders filled with treasure and possibilities and opportunities beyond imagination. So I believe that our life's adventure starts with a journey. And I really trust that you experience life as an adventure and not just as a same old. And hopefully if you've drifted towards same old this morning, we can work through something of the dream of life and the wonder thereof. So I believe that our life is an adventure, and it starts with a journey. And that for each of us, our journey is very individual. It's a journey out of and a journey into. It's God calling us on this journey out of the mundane, out of our everyday, out of the current circumstances, but it's also a journey into the greater plans and the purposes and the dreams that He has for us. And now if you're taking notes of anything, or if you can only remember certain select lines, this is one of those that you need to remember. I believe that our life's journey is ultimately a journey into God. Life's journey is ultimately a journey into God. A journey of discovery. Discovery of the greatness and the awesomeness and the wonder of our God. And also, at the same time, a journey into discovering the dreams and the purposes that He actually has for us. And now this question is we'll leave it rhetorical, but the question is, can there be anything greater? A greater hope, a greater dream, a greater purpose than fulfilling the very dream which God has over you and over your life. The very plan and the purposes that God thought of, that He had in mind, that He spoke over you and that He breathed into you when He brought us into life. Is it possible that there can be something better than that? That there can be a greater hope, dream, or purpose than living in that? I don't think so. Sometimes our journey starts with an intervention, where we're on our little journey, in our little rut, and God comes and He sovereignly intervenes. He chips in, He kicks open the door in a sense, and He sovereignly comes to intervene that life, and He calls us onto this journey with Him. He calls us to come and dream with Him. When I was in primary school, my mother bought it's just a little book about the life of someone in the Bible. In fact, she bought two. The one was the life of Joshua. The other one was the life and the life story of Gideon. And this morning I'm going to spend some time around the life story of Gideon, very briefly. In fact, we're going to continue with this next week. So you'll find Gideon in Judges chapter 6. And so it won't be on the overhead. I'm going to look at Judges chapter 6, two portions there, and then a portion of chapter 7. So imagine with me as we read this. It starts a bit low, I must tell you that. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years He gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the other eastern peoples, the Marmites, the Beconbites, invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza. I did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. They came with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count the men and their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian so impoverished the land and the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. And then in verse 11, same chapter, Judges chapter 6, verse 11 onwards, 11 to 16. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing out wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said to him, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. But sir, Gideon replied. Normally the angel has to say, do not be afraid and all the rest. No. Gideon had this thing in the barrel. But sir, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Please keep yourself in the story. This isn't about Gideon, okay? It's about you. It's about me. But I'll include you in my story and Gideon's story, okay? But sir, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all the wonders that our fathers told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us, and he's put us into the hand of Midian. The Lord turned to him and said, go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Am I not sending you? But Lord, Gideon said, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. The Lord answered, I will be with you. You can actually just leave it there. I will be with you. Chapter 7, early in the morning, Gideon and all the men, he's now rallied the men. I'm jumping to the next chapter. He's rallied the men. I'm not going to read too much of this. Let me quickly tell you the story. I'm sure you know. Blew the trumpet. The fighting men gathered, all of 32,000 men. And then, the Lord says, there are too many men. Gideon, I can imagine, says, but Lord, did you see them? Did you count them? By the way, there were 180,000 of them. So 32 isn't a great... Anyway, and so everyone that was afraid could go home, and 22,000 left, so he was stuck with 10,000. And the Lord said, there are too many men. In any event, God whittles them down to 300. And then it says in verse 7, the Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 that lapped the water, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. So that's what we have. First part of chapter 6 is a picture of the nation of Israel, oppressed and depressed, hiding in mountain clefts, in caves, and in strongholds. And later on, in verse 15, we can see that Gideon isn't really rushing to their aid. He is rather reluctant to assume the leadership of the Israelites, and it's completely understandably so. And then yet when we get to the latter part, which I didn't really read, but I read verse 8, then we find in Judges chapter 7, verse 8, Gideon with 300 men preparing to attack the enemy army, the Midianites. An army, as I mentioned, of 180,000 men. 300 men, completely outnumbered. If you just quickly do the math, they're outnumbered exactly 600 to 1. It's terrible odds. 600 to 1. And these 300, they're nobody special. It's sort of as if they are the crack troops of Israel. They don't have any special training. They don't have any special equipment. They have no history of heroism. They are just 300 very ordinary men. And yet when we come to chapter 7, we find Gideon ready, prepared to attack an army of 180,000 with these 300 men. Now, how is that possible? That you will attack an army of 180,000 men with 300 men. Something must have happened. Something very significant, very encouraging, and very motivational must have happened to Gideon. Not even William Wallace faced anything like these odds. Something must have happened. And it did, and we actually read it. Judges chapter 6, verse 12 happened. An angel appeared, and the angel said, God is with you, mighty warrior. The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor, says the New King James. And it was very significant, very encouraging, and very motivational. So how would you like an angel of the Lord to appear to you in your circumstances? Especially to say that. To say that the Lord is with you, mighty man, mighty woman of valor. And what would you say? What would your response be? Because we saw what his response was. Now, the thing is that when God speaks, even through his angel like this, he speaks about the dreams that are inside of our lives, the purpose that he placed there, the calling. When he speaks into that, he always speaks prophetically. He always refers to the future, that which is not there yet. He never refers to the past. He never refers to where I've been or to what I have done thus far. He doesn't even speak to the current circumstances, the current reality where I'm at now. God always speaks to my future, to where I am going. And the reason is quite simple, because my future cannot be found in my past. My future cannot be found in my past, and neither is my current circumstances much of an indicator of what my future in God could look like. We cannot allow our past to define our future. Your upbringing, the parenting that you've received, the school that you attended, the education that you got or didn't get, your past attempts, your past failures perhaps. You might remember 2 weeks ago we spoke about arise the disqualified. And we spoke about those different ladies in the analogy of Jesus, not the analogy, the genealogy, the genealogy of Jesus. Arise the disqualified. When God speaks to our future, he doesn't speak to all the things that disqualify us. And neither does he speak about my present. Because my present very seldom actually gives me a glimpse of my future or what my future could be. You see, because God's plans and purposes will therefore always contradict my current reality, my current circumstances. It will probably seem completely impossible. Because God does not look at my past, nor at my present, when he speaks into my future. And therefore, whatever he says about my future will contradict my past and my present. It's almost like in Ezekiel 37, when the Lord asks Ezekiel, and he says to him, can these bones live? The valley of dry bones. Can these bones live? So why is it that God always contradicts what we see in the natural? Very simple, because we are not living in the fullness of what God has for us yet. Yet. God knows a lot of things. But amongst a lot of things that he knows these three things. He knows what he's created us for. He knows the dream that he has for us. He knows what he's placed inside of you, firstly. And secondly, he knows that you're not there yet. That we are not there yet. We are not living in the fullness of what he dreams about for us. And thirdly, he also knows that we are often tempted to actually give up halfway, to settle for less, for the status quo, for our own mountain clefts and caves and strongholds. And therefore, God contradicts our reality, because our reality is not his reality. When God speaks to you, it will be a contradiction to your current reality, because your reality is not his reality. So, therefore, when God speaks to Gideon, a man at that point hiding in a wine press out of fear for the enemy, he speaks to Gideon's future. And as he speaks to his future, he calls him a mighty man of valor. And immediately, as we've seen, Gideon starts to question the Lord. Not about the future. He questions the Lord about something of the past, but mostly about the current reality. Lord, have you seen this? You're talking to a man in a hole. Really? He's starting to speak to God about the current circumstances, the global economic crisis. He mentions things like the Strait of Hormuz, unemployment, the rising crime rate, the skyrocketing price of diesel, the increase in interest rates, in exchange rates, and inflation rates, all those kind of things. He acknowledges that he knows that historically God used to be with them. He's aware of that. He even believes that. But God seems very far off now. That perhaps anybody here? Do you believe that at some stage the Lord was with the Afrikaners, with the South Africans, back in the days of Geloftedag or whatever it is, or of your family? You can remember the good days, but now the Lord seems far off. But the one thing that he doesn't question, it's probably the first thing that we would have questioned. Lord, why on earth, can I have a chair please, or a bar stool? Why on earth are you calling me a mighty man of valor when there is absolutely nothing about my current reality to give that impression? You see, I don't know how up to date your Hebrew is, but in the Hebrew language, thank you. In the Hebrew language, the word mighty warrior does not often refer to an unarmed man in hiding. Just thought I'd mention that. So why did Gideon not ask that question? You see, Gideon didn't ask that question because he had a dream. He had a dream to be exactly that, to be a mighty man of valor, a mighty warrior. That dream was inside of him. And the question, therefore, is this morning, so what is the dream that's within you? Why are you sitting here this morning? What are you thinking about? When the angel spoke and said, "Arise, mighty man, mighty woman of valor," what did you perhaps think of? Because when God creates us, He creates us for a purpose. He puts a dream and a vision and a future inside of us. And it might lay dormant. It might lay dormant for many years, but it's there. It's almost like a landmine of potential. And at some point, something happens to trigger that. And all we need is one word from God to be triggered. Just one word from God to activate us. Many years later, many years after this, and Jesus was walking the shores of the Sea of Galilee, and he finds some fishermen. And in Matthew chapter 4, he simply says to them, "Come and follow me." And then it says in verse 20, at once they left their nets and followed him. In verse 22, it said, immediately they left the boat and their father, and they followed him. This really seems irrational because, one of these, as we know, was Peter. Peter was married. There was a wife. There was a family, children, a household. There was even a mother-in-law. That's probably why I left. Okay. No, they acted at once, immediately, because there was something inside of them. Something that they've been feeling for many years, something that said, there must be more than this. There must be more to my life than this. There must be more to my life than what you see, than what I'm experiencing. There must be much more to my marriage than this. There must be more to my business than hitting the targets and accumulating a pension fund. There must be more to my retirement than waiting for the children to phone or maybe come and visit. I want you to take note of this. There's a sense of, I know that the God of the universe had more in mind when He created me. More than this. Therefore, I'm not willing to settle for this, good as it may be at the moment, but I know that there's more. I know that God has bigger dreams for me and for my life. Quick question. Have you peaked in life? Please don't put up your hand. But if you feel that in my life I have peaked, I've reached the pinnacle, the top of what I can possibly be or become, then you can perhaps just pop up your little flag in your heart so that you know I'm speaking to you. Okay? The problem is, if we believe that we have actually reached our peak, then there's only one of two things that can happen. We can sustain that peak for a while, or we can go downhill from there. If you're right at the pinnacle of the mountain, you can either camp there for a while, or you can go down. You can't go further up, if that's what we believe. Once you've reached that peak, there's very little to live for. In fact, that's why sometimes brilliant men and women become really depressed after retirement, often dying, passing away shortly after retirement, because there's nothing left for them to live for. There's no dream, there's no burning desire, there's no passion. I'm going to ask a question which seemingly very easy to answer. The question is, when do you die? The answer is when you stop living. It is. So the follow-up question is, so when do you stop living? You see, this is when it becomes tricky. You stop living the moment you stop dreaming. When you stop believing God's dream for you. That's when you stop living. Which means that's when you start dying. The eventual date on your tombstone might be very different. But the reality is that we begin to die the moment that we stop dreaming about the future. I believe that the best days of this church and this community is still lying ahead of us. And I trust that your best days are still lying ahead of you, whether you're deep into your 80s or not. Why not? Why has God chosen to keep you alive if the only thing that's left for you is to go downhill? No, surely there is more. There's more for us. The response to the dream, to the call, is ours to make. Those fishermen responded immediately when Jesus called them, because deep inside them, they knew there was more to their life. They were waiting for this moment. They knew that somehow there's something burning inside of me, and it's not heartburn. It's God put it inside of them to be more, not to do more, but to be more. And in that day, in that instant, in that moment, Jesus triggered their landmine when he said, "Come and follow me." Their obedience led them to the greatest adventure and some of the greatest road trips possible. The thing is, it didn't come with guarantees. It actually came with a lot of the unknown. In fact, completely unknown. It did not come with a big paycheck. It would actually cost them. It did not come with promises of health, wealth, and prosperity. It actually came with persecution. Yet it was the greatest adventure ever. If we read the Gospels, I'm sure we'd all love to have been those men on the sandy beaches of Galilee, on the shores of Galilee on that morning. We would have loved to be the men in their shoes, the one called to just drop it all and leave with him, to live a life and to have this journey filled with evidence of the supernatural, daily walking with Jesus, seeing miracle after miracle, being given power and authority to actually go into towns and villages with the message of the kingdom, living a life of adventure, and yet also being sure of the outcome. There's so many unknowns, and yet they were sure of the outcome. How is that possible? Because God ordained it. He dreamed it. He said it. And He is truth. And so the question is, what is different for us? What is different for us? I believe that inside of us there's a William Wallace, or whoever your hero is, a mighty warrior. Now, if you've seen the scene of William Wallace and him riding up and down on his horse, rallying the troops to fight the English, you might feel like the guy in the back row, and all you have is a pitchfork, and you really just want to go home. And you really just want the enemy to just go away. You're hoping for it kind of start to rain, so they'll leave. They are English after all. In event. You see, maybe it's because of the lies the enemy has been feeding us. Lies of insignificance and inability and of past failures, causing us to go and hide in our mountain cliffs and strongholds and caves, in our excuses. My excuses of lack of finances or too much work, family needs me. Please take note of this. In your life, in your circumstances, you are the only William Wallace that's going to arrive on the scene. In your life and in your circumstances, you are the only hero that's going to arrive on the scene. There is no other man, no other woman that can replace you in your life. Nobody else can be who you are meant to be. Nobody else can be who you are called to be. Nobody else can live the dream that God has for you. Please hear this. It's not who we are that limits us. It is who we believe we are not. It's not who we are that limits us, but it's who we believe we're not that keeps us back. So we may not have been the fishermen on the shores of Galilee, but that's about the only difference. For each one of us here today, God has a dream, He has a plan, He has a purpose, and it's not found, and it's not defined, it's not shaped by your past, nor your current circumstances. And so your dream might still be dormant, but in an instant it can be triggered when you allow the Holy Spirit to say, "Come, follow me. Arise, mighty man of valor." Into an adventure that would lead you into so much more that we could ever dream possible. A dream that is so much bigger than what you can imagine. Because this dream calls us into adventure with God, an adventure into the depths of His love for us. An adventure into the vast open spaces of His future grace and His abundant provision for us. Into the heights of His faith in us and for us. And in that, we discover what lies around the river bend. We discover our future. We discover what God has prepared for us. And we discover that He has already been there. And He's waiting there for us. And we discover the evidence of the supernatural as our eyes are opened to the miracles around us. The miracles that He's lined up into our future. And we discover what God has done for us and what He's called us into, the power and the authority that we need to accomplish all that He has already prepared and dreamed over us. We journey into a life of His kingdom, and us advancing His kingdom as we start to order every aspect of our lives around His call and around His gospel. When we take the necessary risks with faith, but we actually know something of the outcome, something of the future. This unknown future, there's something of a security about that. Almost sounds contradictory. Because God ordained it. God dreamed it. He said it. In Him, our future is history. Isn't that incredible? He's been there already. So as I close, could today possibly be your day? Is it possible that you can sit here and this morning hear the words spoken over you? Arise, mighty man, mighty woman of dreams. Mighty man, mighty woman of valor. Arise, am I not sending you? Arise in the strength that you have. But then it comes with a bit of a caveat. Just remember that when God calls us, it doesn't always And He often does not call us at all to fight purely for ourselves, for our own benefit, for our own self-preservation, for vengeance, for satisfaction. No, actually, He says, whoever wants to keep his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake, for the sake of the kingdom, will save it. See, this is the secret of living the dream. The secret of the warrior heart of Jesus Christ is that living God's dream leads us into an adventure. And that adventure leads us into Him, into an eternity with the dream-giving God. There is a dream, a vision, a purpose inside each and every one of us. And it's placed there by God Himself. And then He triggers it, and He blows His life into it. And as He does, the dust of past and the dust of circumstances lifts when He promises to be with us, to fulfill that dream, as He says, am I not sending you? Amen.